Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to talk about HumanitZ, that isometric zombie survival game that's been making quite a buzz in the indie community. Look, I know you've probably seen gameplay out there, maybe you've even put in a few hours yourself, but I guarantee there's a lot hidden in this game that goes completely unnoticed. People focus so much on the crafting and the zombies that they end up missing really interesting details about the development, hidden mechanics, and even some curiosities regarding the game's systems. So get ready, because these 10 facts are going to completely change the way you see this game. Let's get into it. When I think of HumanitZ, I immediately associate it with that satisfying isometric survival tension, where every visual detail becomes life or death information. And the fact that the game runs on Unreal Engine leaves a lot of room for this kind of technical nuance to turn into actual gameplay. There was an internal transition to Unreal Engine 4.27. This isn't the kind of thing most people notice right away, but it's usually where the game breathes better, especially in open world settings and dedicated servers. What makes me confident in this conversation is that even the modding community points out that Unreal Engine 4.27 is more efficient for working with the game, so it makes sense for this version number to show up in the story. The point I like most about this change is the lighting. When night stops being just a dark filter and becomes a lighting simulation, you stop playing in the dark and start playing with what the light allows. In practice, this changes how you read danger, because visibility isn't just aesthetic. It becomes a factor that affects the range at which zombies perceive you. So the entire environment becomes either a tool or a trap, depending on how you move. I love it when a survival game treats AI as a living system instead of a catalog of spawns marked on the map. And HumanitZ's zone management is exactly the kind of feature that separates a generic survival game from something that actually makes you feel vulnerable. The idea that noise doesn't just wake up the zombies near you, but literally summons entities from adjacent map cells to form an organic siege, transforms every shot, every explosion, and every door you break down into a calculated risk. What impresses me most is the sense of consequence. It's not that fake system where you kill a horde and 5 minutes later another one appears out of nowhere in the same spot, as if the game had short-term memory. Here, when you screw up in an urban area, you literally trigger a response from the surrounding world, as if the zombies were fluids moving through the streets toward the stimulus. This completely changes the strategy, because you no longer play thinking how many enemies are here, but rather how many enemies can get here if I don't stay quiet. And I feel like this type of design is what makes you respect the map differently. Every block becomes a potential danger zone, not just because of what you see, but because of what you might accidentally wake up. That urge to explore a shop, grab better loot, or test a new weapon, all of that starts to carry more weight because you know the game won't punish you with a cheap scripted spawn, but with a simulation that makes sense within the world's logic. This silent horde system forces you to play with discipline. You learn to value suppressors, melee weapons, and planned escape routes, because you know noise isn't just a number on the screen. It's an open invitation to become the center of attention for an entire neighborhood of the undead. And when a game can make you think twice before shooting a lone zombie, it's a sign that the AI is doing its job right. I always get frustrated when a survival game treats vehicles like fast travel points with a car texture. So when I see that HumanitZ calculates actual center of mass and cargo weight, it completely changes my relationship with transportation in the game. It's not just cosmetic. It's not just, oh, the car is heavy, so it goes slower. It's applied physics that punishes you if you don't respect the basic laws of inertia and balance. The detail of the braking distance increasing with a heavy load and the ease of flipping over in tight turns is the kind of mechanic that forces you to think like a real driver, not like a player used to drifting at 90 degrees without consequence. How many times have we stuffed the trunk to the brim on a loot run thinking we can just floor it and head back to base? Then you take a turn, confidently, the car flips, and you lose not only the vehicle, but potentially hours of farming and even your own life if there's a horde nearby. I really like this approach because it adds a layer of logistical planning that goes beyond take everything that fits. You need to balance greed with safety, deciding if it's worth carrying that 5th ammo container or if it's better to make 2 trips. And this isn't tedious, it's immersive because it makes you feel the real weight of your choices literally. The car stops being a magic item and becomes a valuable resource that you need to operate with care. And the coolest part is that this system punishes haste, which is exactly the most common mistake in survival. That feeling of I need to get back before dark leads you to speed too much, brake late, take sharp turns, and suddenly you're flipped over in the middle of nowhere with zombies closing in. It's the kind of death where you don't blame the game, you blame yourself. And that creates memorable stories, that moment when you lost everything, not because of bad RNG, but because of basic physics and excessive pride. I really like this design choice because it makes it clear that the game wants to see you occupying the world, not manufacturing a new world from scratch. This idea of favoring existing structures makes the map feel more important. You look at a house, a warehouse, or a gas station, and it's not just pretty scenery, it's a real candidate for a home. And that totally changes how I explore. The technical curiosity behind this is quite clever. The game encourages reinforcing buildings that are already rendered because these constructions already have known collision and geometry for the system. When you use reinforcement on these collision coordinates, the game reuses a solid base that has already been tested within the map itself, saving processing power and avoiding that classic survival chaos where a new wall becomes a lottery of clipping, invisible holes, or cursed hitboxes. For my playstyle, this hits hard because I stop thinking I'm going to build the perfect fortress and start thinking which building gives me an advantage with the least risk. A house with few entrances, an easy to control second floor, windows that can be boarded up, and an emergency exit naturally becomes a more stable base, not just in terms of defense, but in terms of the game's own reliability. I think this creates a more grounded feeling. You're surviving in a world that already existed, so it makes sense to turn what's left into shelter instead of reinventing architecture during the apocalypse. And it's a kind of technical decision that provides comfort for the player. Fewer collision bugs, fewer headaches, and more time to focus on what matters: loot, escape routes, and that silence that never lasts very long. I really enjoy it when a survival game makes loot have a memory of time, because it gives the world a sense of history. It's not just you hitting the same houses looking for the same miracle. It's the entire server aging with you. This idea of a world decay variable, where the more days pass, the lower the chance of finding fresh food and the higher the chance of finding damaged items, is the kind of detail I feel firsthand, especially when that grocery store and kitchen route starts yielding less and less. The coolest part is that this affects your behavior without needing a boring tutorial. At first, you play in vacuum mode, happily grabbing canned goods, snacks, and anything that looks clean. But as the days progress, the game kind of gives you a message. The tourism phase is over because variety decreases, quality drops, and you start to realize that depending solely on shelves is living at the mercy of luck. For me, the psychological shift is perfect. You move from a scavenging mindset to a production mindset. Then, farming and hunting stop being optional activities for role players and become a survival plan because the world won't supply you forever. You are the one who needs to create a self-sustaining system, even when the loot is increasingly worn out. And this mechanic has a side effect I love. It creates urgency and identity for each server. The first days are more about expedition and stockpiling, then it turns into maintenance and routine. And this even changes the value of things. Fresh food becomes an event. An item in good condition becomes a treasure. And any wrong decision weighs more because recovering is harder. In the end, I like it because the game doesn't just kill you with zombies. It squeezes you with time, which is the most honest enemy of all. I always find it commendable when a survival game doesn't treat all players with the same iron fist. And in the case of HumanitZ, this difficulty granularity is one of the points that catches my attention the most. The ability to fine-tune things like stamina regeneration, speed, or even the damage multiplier by weapon type slashing versus blunt shows that the game was designed to serve both those who want something more accessible, those looking for a heavy punishment. What gets me most excited is that with these adjustments, HumanitZ can be almost an entirely different game depending on the server. In a more arcade-like environment, you can roll with shooting, dodging, and fast movement, enjoying the horde chaos without losing your breath. At the other extreme, with slow stamina, high damage, and higher penalties for blunt weapons, every fight becomes an exercise in calculation and patience, almost a simulacrum of real survival, where taking one wrong hit could be the end of your run. For me, this flexibility is a gift for those who like to run various different configurations. You can test the game as a looser shooter, then crank up the difficulty on a new server and feel everything getting heavier, more expensive, and more realistic. This also keeps the game loyal to its audience. Those who prefer something lighter find their space, and those who want a brutal survival test can build or find servers that really make it hurt. The most technical server configuration menu in the genre becomes a starting point. You don't just adapt the game to your style, you also choose the type of experience you want to have, whether it's fast action and controlled chaos, or slow, calculated, and punitive tension, where every weapon choice, every movement, and every interaction with the enemy carries much more weight. I think it's brilliant when a game transforms sound into an actual mechanic because it changes the way I move across the map. It's no longer about going fast, it's about going right. This idea of spheres of influence makes every action feel like a panic button. Running, slamming a metal door, or firing without a suppressor isn't just an animation and sound effect. It's you sending a signal to the whole world that there's food walking around. What I like most about this invisible wave logic is that it gives a physical face to noise. In my head, it works as if you threw a stone into a lake. You don't see the wave in the game, but it's there, expanding. And any AI ear that touches that circle will react. And then comes that good paranoia. I'm clear in here. But did what I just do wake up the whole street outside? The icing on the cake is when the game treats different calibers as different audio threats, with range measured in real meters on the map. This makes a gunfight a strategic choice, not just DPS. There are weapons that might handle the zombie in front of you, but also send an invitation to every undead in a giant radius to visit you. And it's in those moments that I stop thinking which gun kills faster and start thinking which gun kills me less in 2 minutes. This system forces me to play smarter, walk slower when needed, think twice before opening that noisy door, and treat every shot as a commitment. Because the shot doesn't end when the zombie falls. The shot ends when you're sure its echo didn't become a breadcrumb trail, leading a horde straight to you. I have a love-hate relationship with permadeath, but the way HumanitZ handles it is, in my opinion, one of the smartest design wins for those who enjoy long-term play. Technically, when you die, your character is gone, along with all their attributes and skills. But the world you built your bases, your vehicles, that barricade that took hours to put up, stays there. This creates a very interesting loop where you stop investing only in the avatar and start investing in the legacy. What I find brilliant about this is how it changes the psychology of frustration. In other games, dying means losing everything, which sometimes makes you want to uninstall immediately. Here, the pain of loss exists, of course, because training skills takes time, but knowing that my armored car and my food stash are waiting for me in the garage gives me a different kind of motivation to start over. It's as if the game says, okay, you failed, but what you built was useful. This also transforms the way I plan my sessions. I find myself thinking much more about infrastructure than XP grinding. Instead of being obsessed with maximizing my aim or strength right away, I prioritize making the environment safe for a future me. If I die today, the next survivor I create will inherit a world that is a little less hostile And that sense of continuity makes all the difference in keeping us engaged. This design choice mitigates that feeling of wasted time. You aren't just leveling up a disposable avatar. You are taming the map. And to me, that is the essence of good survival. The certainty that even if I make a fatal mistake, my effort to turn that chaos into order was not in vain. The character dies, but the fortress remains. Rain and snow aren't just there for atmosphere. They become a cost of survival because the game increases calorie consumption when the weather turns bad. This makes every quick trip outside the base feel like a decision with a price, as if the map itself were charging you a toll just to exist out there. The point that gets me is when the character gets wet and stamina loses 20% efficiency, like a technical state of hypothermia before things get truly serious. It's not a random debuff. It's that silent warning that if I persist in exploring this way, I won't lose the fight for lack of damage. I'll lose it for lack of breath. In practice, I change my route and my pace because of this. I start treating shelter and drying off, avoiding getting wet as much a part of my kit as weapons and food. Even that clever shortcut through the water stops being clever because the time saved becomes a performance loss. And in HumanitZ, performance is life when the chaos starts. And the cruelest and coolest part is that the weather kills you indirectly. It weakens you, makes you hungry faster, limits your escape, and then the zombie just takes advantage. When the game makes the environment an active enemy, I feel like I'm truly surviving, not just shooting at things that walk. I have a different level of respect for studios that start small like Yodub's, because you can feel that the development wasn't done in a boardroom, but on the factory floor of Discord, along with the community. Knowing that many of the weapons and items we use today came from direct feedback and community votes changes my perception. It's not a dev trying to guess what's fun. It's a dev asking the players, hey, is this any good or is it trash? What I find genius in this story is the discard metric. Analyzing what players throw away to decide what needs to change or be removed is a lesson in honest design. How often do we see giant games full of useless items that only serve to clutter the inventory? Here, if people were massively discarding an item, it was a clear signal that it had no real utility, and the team used that to trim the fat and focus on what actually had gameplay value. This creates a very good feeling that the loot makes sense. When you find a tool or a new weapon, there's a huge chance it will be useful and satisfying because it passed through this Darwinian filter of the community. The game becomes leaner, more to the point, and avoids that frustration of opening a difficult chest only to find an item that is statistically worse than your starting stick. In the end, this humble and collaborative origin explains much of HumanitZ's success to me. It's a game built by many hands, where we feel that our playtime helped shape the final product. It's not just about having the best ideas. It's about having the humility to look at the data, listen to the complaints, and turn that into mechanics. And when the studio plays on the same team as the fans like this, the result rarely goes wrong.